Hello, I'm MPX Toycat, and welcome back to an episode of the Minecraft Bedrock Update Adventures Let's Play. Today, I'm going to be creating a brand new biome, and let's be honest, it's going to be an incredibly ugly brand new biome, and it's going to come on the back of me mining all of my end pillars. I've been doing that for weeks now, spending hours and hours and hours just mining obsidian using my Netherite Efficiency 5 pickaxe. It's taken a lot longer than you'd figure to mine even just a few end pillars, but the result is I have a lot of obsidian I'll now be using to create a brand new biome in my world, because you might know that I've destroyed another desert. The reason I've destroyed another desert is I need a lot of sandstone. I also need a lot of sand, but like, you know what? The thing about sand in Minecraft is it's just such high value item. You need it for sand, you need it for sandstone, you need it for glass. It just comes up very, very frequently, and as a result, I needed a lot of it. So I've destroyed another desert. I'll likely destroy even more of this desert as time goes on, and so that's why I'm going to be slowly but surely replacing it with some obsidian to make a brand new obsidian biome. Is this the most expensive biome I've probably made in Minecraft? Yes. Is it needlessly expensive to the point where you don't even get to value the blocks that are being made? Yes, but you know, welcome to the Let's Play. This is what we do here. Does there need to be a point? No, there doesn't. One of the things I've always gone for, one of the messages I've always tried to say with the Let's Play is, you know, rather than asking why should we do something in Minecraft, it's a video game. Instead, you should be asking, why shouldn't we? You know, maybe that's my contrarian nature just coming through in another way when I play games. It's not enough just to play games. I have to also confuse people on the internet. But no, I really do think an obsidian biome is going to look pretty cool, and it's going to look much better than a destroyed desert. Like, you know, there's something interesting about seeing this for the first time. Oh, I left a piece of sand. Wow, that was close. Almost sandstone even. Wow, almost lost that forever. There's something interesting about looking around this place, but I personally think that it's more interesting to have everything fit together in not always a destroyed way. I think destruction is beautiful because it provides the pathway for reconstruction, to rebuild. And when you rebuild, you can do things better because, you know, there are so many mistakes that have been made in the world, in your life, that I'm sure you'd redo. Like, one of the things I've always considered is, like, wouldn't it be interesting to go back in time, you know, like when you were, I don't know, a teenager or something, or when you were, like, much younger than that, and, like, see what you could do with your existing knowledge. It's interesting how many different things you would very slightly differently revisit, right? At least it's interesting to me. And anyway, with that said, yeah, this is going to be an obsidian biome. I'm going to start the edges because the middle is going to be very easy, whereas the edges require a lot of decisions. So we'll kind of start there. Speaking of starting there, while we make a brand new biome made of a lot of obsidian, and it does kind of hurt knowing each of these takes like 2 seconds to mine, and I'm just placing them like it's candy. Like, yeah, you know, I have a dumb amount of these. What does it matter if I spend all this time? Anyway, with that said, I want to talk, like we always do in the Let's Play, it's not just a opportunity to build and to show you how we build. I mean, recently I've been doing some cuts so that I can be like, hey, here's me now, and here's me 3 minutes after that same now because of the power of editing. No, even though there is a certain fun in using editing for survival projects, and indeed I've been working on a fair few of those for the channel to see if that's a thing that's fun. I think the Let's Play is not about like, hey, here is about the survival progress. Like, maybe you like what I'm doing in the Let's Play world and you find that enjoyable, but personally, I think this is a better series to show what Minecraft is really, you know, is. And by that, I mean, like, you know, one of the things I've always wanted to do on YouTube, one of the things I did in my original Let's Play series, is I show people just playing Minecraft. I try to use as little editing as possible because, again, when you, you know, even though editing is great to make something more compelling or engaging, which is how the YouTube algorithm obviously loves you if you try to do those things, I also think that there's a certain element of like, there's a certain lack of honesty and transparency you use with that. Like, honestly, this is what it's like to build in Minecraft. There isn't some magic off-camera god where like you know, what took 10 seconds for you took 5 minutes for me, or what takes 30 minutes in the form of a video later this week is going to take, you know, literally 14 hours for me to do. Like, you know, I think editing hides a certain amount of the real world, and I think sometimes the real world doesn't need to be hidden. So anyway, real quick, let's talk about this biome, shall we? Let's talk about how this came to be. Why am I making a desert out of obsidian? And that's a good question I'm going to proceed to barely answer right now, because here's the deal. I decided for the first time ever, I'd put out a vote in the comment section of one of my Let's Plays just to see how people would react to it. I don't think, the reason I haven't done that before, the reason a lot of people love like voting and all those sorts of things is because it sounds wonderful in theory, right? I mean, I upload videos because I like to see your reaction to them. That's the whole point of uploading on the internet, right? And that's why I don't turn off my comment section at the very least. And, you know, like, so one of the things about that should be like, yeah, and I should love to engage with you, and like, you know, honestly, the Let's Play is equally as much yours as it is mine, so like, you should decide everything. But I think there's a really interesting thing to be said about why the audience shouldn't decide everything on something like this. You know, again, the audience decides, the metrics decide that, like, you know what people want? They want to see fast edited. This whole video, why is it so many minutes? Why is it deep in the double digits? This should be a 5-minute video where I give uplifting lessons about how, like, oh yeah, obsidian, it's wacky. You ever notice how on Bedrock obsidian's randomly rotated? So it never makes a clean pattern. Look at this block here, then look at this block here. Notice how they're rotated in opposite ways. Actually, are they? I literally can never tell. You know, it's this one. Actually, wait, is it? Maybe it's not randomly rotated. Maybe I'm imagining that now. Look at the obsidian texture and tell me if you can spot the pattern. But also, my point here is that I'm going to go to sleep and we're going to continue this in the morning. Or I'm going to take you to sleep because you know what? Is there a need for a cut here? It's hard to tell. This is something that everyone has to make the decision for themselves. But personally, I feel like the fewer cuts you make, the better. I feel like that gives you a more honest reflection into what it's like to play Minecraft. It's like we're playing Minecraft together and talking about why I think people, you know, some people are smart. Persons are smart. Individuals are smart. And collectives are the opposite of that. I think when you take a giant group of people, you tend to get, you know, quite a lot of rather questionable results. I think, you know, the adage of, again, people, the biggest argument against democracy is a conversation with the average voter. I think that, like, actually, most people are very smart, but something about expecting people to be smart makes them dumb. And that's, you know, like, if you expect the best from people and you tell everyone they have to be it, you know, if you tell everyone that, yeah, you're incredible at this thing, don't worry about, like, the specifics, don't worry about the ramifications and what you're deciding, just kind of decide it. We get a lot of really questionable outcomes from people. And an example of this would probably be, so, you know, one of the things I do in this Let's Play is I tell you what's going on in my last week. So, in the last week, the UK kind of, like, even, you know, we're one of the best countries in terms of vaccinations right now, in terms of how many are we going out there. And so, logically, the idea was like, oh, yes, that means we can return stuff. And so, the roadmap when, like, things would open, like, when can you go to a gym? Not for another 2 months. Who wants to go to the gym anyway? Like, what's the point in that? Or, you know, like, who even has hobbies? Not me, that's for sure. And anyway, so, like, the idea of, like, when you could do certain things was kind of established. And it basically meant that, like, by the time that I leave the UK, which has been fixed in stone now as being in April, by the time I leave the UK, nothing so far has been mentioned about if I can even do the bare minimum of my driving lesson. Like, driving lessons are suspended right now. Obviously, you can't drive a car without one of these things, but, like, you know, who needs to drive in the last 6 months? I don't know. You know, I've actually been a little bit better these last, you know, I do want to talk about why democracy and why why you can't just let individuals decide everything. But first, I want to go on the tiniest bit of a rant about my personal life. I know this sucks. I know everyone's going through some version of this because the world's in a weird place right now. But yeah, basically, I've been back in the UK for 6 months now. Off those 6 months, I'll be back in the UK for 6 months as of April. Off the 3.5 months I've been back, 19 days were not spent in some form of lockdown. And in those 19 days, the only thing that were legal were some restaurants, if they had, like, all the, you know, the COVID safe things in some parts of the UK, and then also hairdressers and gyms. That was the only thing, and now those things are closed for good. Also, again, you could do driving tests if it was, you know, COVID safe, etc., etc., etc. Now there is no way to do those things, and it's kind of just like it's really worn on me because it's like, that was my big thing I wanted to accomplish. Like, I've been spending, like, hours and hours and hours poring over every section of how to learn to drive in the UK. I don't ever intend to drive here. I only want a driving license because that is required to get behind a car in another country. I've considered learning to drive in another country, but those are only valid for a certain amount of time. I have to learn to drive in this country, and this country will not let me learn to drive, even though my intention is not to drive here. And it's one of those things where it's like, you know, this is where I call it, like, layers of bureaucracy, right? Like, layers of very well-intentioned things add up to mean things that aren't very well-intentioned at all. And this is you know, the reason I mentioned this little story, like, woe is Toycat, oh no, you can't learn to drive. And it's like, yeah, you know, this, maybe I should have done this earlier. Maybe I should have had wealthy parents who could, like, pay for this for me while I was in school. You know, I wish that was how it was. I am kind of envious looking back. Like, I used to think at the time, like, yeah, you have to waste your time doing that. I'm so glad that it's not even an option for me. But, like, looking forwards, it's like, yeah, this is just more of a pain to do when mixing in with everyday life. And one of the things that, like, really gets me about this, one of the things that really makes me realize this is that I am trying to do something that like is just like I know it's seen as entirely unessential, and that's where I want to. That's actually what I want to take the point for with like why I think there is a problem with letting people decide everything. I think that there's a really interesting idea that it's one we all kind of have that like you know what, there are certain things that are just morality based, right? Like, you know, morals. We all have them deep down. But the thing about like when you ask people to apply like, okay, what should be the hard line of what is crime and what is not? How do you decide? For instance, I've been so I ride a electric scooter. I'm in traffic like every day, whether I like it or not. It's just I am. I haven't been riding a scooter because I've been trying to do the driving thing, and you can lose your driving license for driving and not whatever. We're not going to dive into the weird technicalities of UK law and how I've been not able to get around semi recently. Because they've been enforcing something in preparation. You know, okay, you know, I'm gonna rant about this. This is Toycat's Let's Play. I'll rant about whatever I want. So, in preparation for making something legal, they're enforcing the fact that it's illegal right now. That is electric scooters. Whatever, that's fine. You know, like, who am I to be in charge of that one? That's entirely fine. But one of the reasons I bring this up, the thing that makes it so interesting to me, is that like, there is just so many little layers built on top of layers, built on top of layers, and they all make sense. But one of the things about riding a bike in London, because I've been riding a bike semi-recently as a replacement for the electric scooter, because you know that's much safer, even goes much faster. And in one of the things I spot is just like, it's just informally true that bikes don't have to follow red lights. And I've heard so many people talk about this, like, yeah, they just don't. And it's one of those, it's such an interesting thing to me that like, oh, so bikes just don't follow red lights? Yeah, I mean, they should, but they don't. And it's like, well, I mean, the reason no one bothers enforcing it is because the only people they're putting at risk is themselves. It's not like, you know, if a car runs a red light, they'll hit another car in an intersection. Both drivers might die. You might kill a family. You know, big problem. If you ride a bike, like, well, I mean, again, for whatever reason, you can debate whether it even should be a valid reason. It's just been vaguely decided that, like, actually, yeah, red lights don't apply to bikes here. And you know, if you're a cyclist, you're like, yeah, of course it shouldn't apply. Like sometimes you're waiting there for a really long time for no reason. It's your own safety. Whereas if you're not a cyclist, if you're someone who really hates them, because, you know, like a lot of people are rubbed the wrong way by cyclists and whatnot, they're like, yeah, of course you shouldn't. That's the rules. You follow the rules. And it's interesting because, like, the idea of, like, just follow the rules, that's what you're meant to do, is a really basic but interesting concept. Like, yeah, of course you should follow the rules. But the point about rules, the interesting thing about them is, like, everyone defines, like, the rules that, like, have to be followed versus the ones that are just there for guidelines as being somewhere against what they want to do, you know? Like, all the things that I want to do, well, those, you know, if there are rules against it, well, obviously they don't really apply. I mean, if I you know, like, do some casual drugs, then, like, drug laws apply to drugs that are above the one that I do. If I am, you know, like, maybe running a red light, well, of course, it's my risk that I'm taking, etc., you know? People can justify all sorts of crazy things using this kind of logic, like, well, you know, I mean, this is just a law tax evasion. I mean, it's my money anyway. Why am I? And basically, yeah, the idea that you can just, like, kind of justify anything by being like, well, the law was basically intended for me to do the thing that I want to do anyway, and so really I'm following the law by not following it. And it's interesting because this is a kind of logical progression of, like, when you give people leeway to interpret things themselves, obviously everyone decides, like, what's bad, what's, like, the real evil in society. It's always going to be somewhere below what they do. And it's interesting because most people assume that that's not true. Most people do that, you know, like, outwardly, but then assume that they're not. And that's what drives me, that's one of the things that's been bugging me about the world recently. There's been a kind of drive towards, like, yeah, of course, follow whatever it is. But, like, you know, because, you know, those are the rules. You gotta follow rules. That's why they're rules. But then also, oh yeah, the specific rules that apply to me, well, they're not really the case. Or they deliberately interpret them wrong. You know, like, oh yeah, well, you know, if you read the you know, for instance, I don't know, if you read the highway code, it says that, like, should do this. Of course I should be following the red lights. Like, yeah, but like, I mean, should is very different to must. And actually, I don't know. I'm not a legal expert in the UK. If should means you must do something, I'm pretty sure it means you should. One of my favorite things is like stores recently. Obviously, stores want you to wear. They wanted to do a variety of things. That's for safety reasons, because there's a lot of people in there and they want to not. It makes sense. But one of the interesting things about stores is they say like, oh yeah, please could you do this, and then they thank you in advance. And a part of me has always been rubbed the wrong way by like preactive thank yous. Like I can't say, oh, I'll take off your shoes, thank you. It's like, no, I will wait to if I thank you before you take off your shoes, what happens if you don't? Am I retracting my thank you? Am I then following up my thank you of like, oh, I thanked you unnecessarily. I'm sorry. I would like to unthank you right now. No, you don't get to do that. And you know, this whole rant is kind of kind of ludicrous, I know. But anyway, I think that when you give people the power to be like, yeah, you should decide what exactly is all bueno and what exactly is not all bueno, you're very consciously, whether you know it or not, just telling people like, yeah, do whatever you want, but then judge other people for doing what you wouldn't, you know? Like, something, admittedly, people have been driven crazy by being stuck in their homes for so long. I understand it. I feel that. I get that on a somewhat frequent basis. But the amount of complaining I see where it's like, oh, I can't believe that we're still in this situation, and it's clearly because other people don't follow the rules. Acting like, they're following the rules is like this perfect, safe trinity where, like, no one could ever... the things that I do are perfectly safe. The things other people do, oh, have you heard about people doing... Oh, yeah, that's not okay. And I don't know, it's really driven me to a crazy point at this point, because again, like, now... there are certain things that, like, if you are going to try and make the decision about when to... again, like, there's an interesting driving point behind the status quo, where, like, we don't have obsidian deserts in Minecraft. I'm doing something very absurd right now. If there were obsidian deserts in Minecraft, I would just be changing my desert from one to the other. Or to put it this way, once I build my obsidian desert, even if you hate it, you're going to be like, well, it's there. I'm going to leave that be, right? Like, no one would ever say, yeah, I'm going to mine that whole thing. You should remove the obsidian desert. It looks ugly. Because that would be undoing a lot of work. Even if you don't agree with the work, we have this, like, appreciation for things that exist in the world. Like, you don't take away things that exist. And, oh, yeah, we probably should work out lighting, shouldn't we? Or I could just get myself a lot of XP for my pickaxe. We all know that I need that. So we're just going to critical hit. There we go. Let's get me some pickaxe XP. But it's really interesting to me, the idea of the status quo and how, like, oh yeah, if you have something, really hard to take it away. If you've taken something away, really hard to, justify giving it back, right? So here's an interesting thing. A lot of companies have gone out of business during this time. I don't know why. Something about being illegal to visit them or something. I don't know. I don't follow the precise details of why... why someone goes out of business. But, like, basically, some randomly, entirely out of the, something entirely out of the control of anyone. A lot of businesses have been going out, and then some of those businesses have been not paying their staff salaries, and like that they should have been. They were lying about like, oh yeah, it'll be coming soon, and then soon never came. And then they're like, oh, but it'll be soon now, and then that soon never came either. And basically, they're just like consistently lying about when money would be coming to their staff, while keeping it to pay all of their other things. And this is an interesting example of that status quo thing, right? You would never, as a business, imagine you're a restaurant, you would never be able to be like, hey, so that staff that I pay, that money I paid you last week, pay it back, please. Like, because this was them embezzling money. It's like a crime. But the reason it seems logical is while they've got the money in their accounts, they're like, okay, let's not pay the staff salaries. Let's pay this cost now so we can keep the restaurant in business. We can, just for an extra month or whatever, so we can eventually pay those staff salaries. It's better to do that than to pay the staff and have no job for them in the future. They made that weird internal logic, but you would never, again, you would never, if the reverse happened, if it was like, oh yeah, so, we're going through some tough times. We know you paid you salary last month. Could we have your salary back? And then we'll use that salary to pay off our rent. No company would ever do that. It would never be effective, right? No one's going to give their money back to a dying company If if you work for GameStop before they went under, actually GameStop, it was Game in the UK, like our GameStop equivalent. If you worked for them before they went under, you wouldn't be like, oh yeah, you can borrow my money. You promised to give it back though, right? But if they already have the money, it's like, well, it's it's our decision to give it out to you, or we can just kind of play around with it a little bit. And so now we're in the situation like that, where like, oh yeah, so there's there's a bunch of money floating around, but the money is like the rights of people, right? There's a bunch of these things floating around, and it's like, when do you give that back? Now knowing that when you give those back to people are like, well, as soon as we get them back, it's entirely okay to do. Like this is the messy thing that I'm like moderately concerned about. Like as soon as we had like we had like a big health issue, right? We had this huge health concern worldwide. You might have heard about it. But now people have the logic in their heads of like, if something is legal to do, it must be safe to do. When it was unsafe to do, it was illegal, and therefore you make the link that like, well, if it was unsafe when it was illegal, now that it is legal, it must be. And it's a logical chain to follow. Like if if we're gonna take away freedoms when it's unsafe, then like now we have them back, they're entirely exercisable. But then it's really hard to be like, when is it safe? There is always a risk. For instance, like learning to drive is a really dumb thing for me to do. Objectively horrific, like, especially like becoming a motorist, if that was my main form of transport, it's not gonna be. But that would be me throwing myself an extra, 0.1% chance of death every year, which doesn't sound like a lot for me, but when you add up like all the people trying to do it, why do we let anyone ever learn to drive again? Like it doesn't seem logical until you realize that the reason that we do it normally is not because we're like, well, it's this magical safe thing. It's like, well, no, we allow people to drive. We give them the rights to drive every year because we've determined that compared to the risk, the transport, the opportunities that it gives people, mostly work opportunities, like having access to good transport is the single biggest determinant in whether you'll be in poverty or whether you won't be. Like rich versus poor are the biggest thing is like good transport. You need to access jobs. When someone is willing to give you money to do something for them, you need to be able to get to that person to do the thing. That's why if you look at like, I don't know, that's why I've always like praised people who can like move around their country so much. But anyway, it's like, yeah, that's why it's a thing that you need people to be able to do. But if you've taken it away on not those grounds, if you take something away on safety reasons, how do you ever make something like safe to do again? And I think it's one of those things we are going to deal with. It's going to be fine. But there's going to be this real rough teething period in the middle. And it's going to... I don't know. I guess it's one of those like worries that I have. I saw recently a bunch of conspiracy theorists and I've posted a bunch of things in my little past being like, oh yeah, what people are doing right now, it's basically as bad as those 1930s Germans. And obviously that's kind of ludicrous. Like they've jumped the gun a bit on this one. But imagine you were already a crazy conspiracy theorist, right? You already had this belief that there was this big government project out to get you. Like for whatever reason, there are people in positions of power that want to take away the things that you love because they just like being cruel to you. That doesn't make any sense, but it's what they like to do. And then all of a sudden, this starts happening. Even though there's really publicly stated good reasons, that you can't always trust publicly stated reasons because like if especially if you're a conspiracy theorist, you've heard all the times that publicly stated reasons don't line up with the private, which is like somewhat common. We hate to say, but it is true. And okay, let's extend this layer around, shall we? This is going to look like a real weird biome, huh? I didn't realize just how much obsidian we're placing until now as I look across there. But it's really interesting because like, yeah, you realize that often you're not told the truth because like you're not trusted with the truth. And then like these people are going down crazy rabbit holes about like, yeah, so this proves that we were right all along. There is a deep government, yeah, and then like they'll blame it on whatever group. And it's really interesting to see these types of people and like their like descent into the depths of this. And maybe you say to me like Toycat, like, well, why are you saying that this is surely you're saying the same thing. But like here's the thing, right? We for years we've been one of the biggest causes of imprisonment across a lot of the world, but like take the US as a big example, has been like, oh yeah, drug offenses. People do drugs, and it's like, ooh, that's a big crime. And it's one of those like things where most people are like, yeah, we probably should treat that as like a public health thing. Like, you know, if you're doing too much, insert drug, you know, leaves here, or insert powder here, or whatever it is. It's like, isn't that a thing that we should see as like a health problem if it's starting to impact the rest of your life? And like, so people have been like lobbying, like, yeah, it's not a law problem, it's a health problem. But then a lot of these same people have been again, it's interesting to me how this crossed the political divide in a way you wouldn't expect, where a lot of those same people are like, oh, we got this brand new health problem, right? This brand new, you know, like it's a crown-shaped virus or something like that. You know what? I reckon only logical thing to do with this new health crisis is treat it as a legal crisis. We need to, you know, all those people not following the rules. Yeah, we need to lock them up. We need to, and it's just interesting to me. Yeah, that like whenever society flips like that, that's when you've always got to be on the watch out the most. Like that's why I think there's something to be said, even though it's terrible and it's boring. That like, oh yeah, we just have these two sides. When your side does something, you go, yeah, I love my side. I don't look any more into this besides saying that if it comes from people that I already agree with, then they must be right about this new political stance, as is the two-party system in America, right? But you know, like even though there's a certain hatred towards that, there is also a certain stability and balance. Like there's a force for these people, there's a force for those people. Right now, we've headed into this territory where like, oh yeah, all the opinions have been flipped. A lot of the things that we expected like 5 years ago are going to change. And it's interesting because you always hear about these things happening. Like when you look back at the last 100 years, ignoring like the Spanish flu, like when you look back at that, society seems to go in like one. You know, you assume big changes happened, and you tried to point out when they were. Like, oh yeah, like when the pound moved to decimalize, or when the metric system became widespread. That was a real big change. When Britain joined that thing, or when the US when the USSR collapsed and the Cold War ended. That was a big change for society. But when you look at most of them, it's like, oh yeah, so life just kind of kept going on, right? It's there wasn't actually a big change. Life just continued in the way that life does a very good job at doing. And the reason I find that interesting is because this is the first moment in my lifetime where I'm like, yeah, this is everything. It's not going to be it's not a great reset. It's not a great everything changing. It's like everyone's like expectations from before now have to be reshaped, and now we work on those new expectations. And that's what I find to be kind of sad. A lot of our old ideas that we were like so close to are just gonna be gone for a little bit. They'll come back in 10 years as new ideas. It's gonna be roughly the same but very slightly different. But a lot of things that you might have been excited about, a lot of the changes and ideas and whatever else, they're just gone for a while. They're just they just don't exist for a bit. And yeah, maybe that's like the most grim, depressing end point I could have. But I think it's like it's that proof of, you know, I love history because history often repeats itself, or it doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, or whatever the phrase is. But I find history to be really interesting to look at, to see how, you know, the corollaries between events in the future and stuff. And I guess it's interesting to see for the first time in the flesh, for the first time in person. It's there's this real. I guess what I'm saying, I'm starting to see, for the first time, those big changes happen. And I didn't really realize it until just now. I genuinely think a lot of people will, you know, like, besides, if you're really young, this year is going to mess with you. If you're, like, moderately young, like, again, there's, like, a really particular set of ages where this will be, like, a lifetime-defining moment. I think, like, I've said since the beginning, like, you know, in a few years, it's not going to be something on our minds every day like we think it will be now. People, we have this over tendency to state what is in the present as being the biggest fit. This is what makes us kind of unreliable at planning for the future. You know, here's something interesting, right? Like the water, electricity, blah 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 blah. It all just went out in Texas, right? That's some news of the last week. But despite that, everyone is now going, yeah, but that was like the only time in 20 years. I'm like, or in 10 years, or whatever the last. You know, it was a freak weather event that isn't going to happen again. It's going to happen in 10 years. Like, that probably doesn't make it worthwhile to prepare for on like a You know, like on a systemic level, like, you know, if you're the government, are you gonna spend 10% more every year just so you can prepare for a 1 in every 10-year event or something? You know, there's an interesting debate to have. But the more interesting thing to me is the fact that everyone is now going, well, it's over now. Guess it's never happening again. It's like, no. This is like, there's nothing stopping. In 10 years, it'll be the same. Like, have your preparation plan because you don't know when it's going to happen till it's in the midst of happening. Like, have some water stored. There's I found this page on the CDC. So that's the American Center for Disease Control. That's interesting. I wonder why it's on them, actually. I just realized now. But they've got this page about like what every American household should have. And it's like supply of water for X amount of time, supply of this, supply of that. And like no one has those supplies ready, right? Everyone knows that, I hope everyone knows. Most people know that they should have those supplies ready to go at a moment's notice. But also at the same time, they don't. Like they, no one has those. Even me, I'm always like, I'm like a little bit paranoid, a little bit, you know, like, little bit like, you know, I don't know what's coming or when. And even me, I'm like, you know, I have 6 liters of water on hand at any point in time. That's like, what, 3 days of an average human's consumption? Like a day and a half of me and my girlfriends. I have like, maybe like a week's worth of food always stockpiled. And I'm the crazy one. I'm the only person I know that's even like that. Like that is me being a crazy individual for preparing for like barely a week without access to things. And I wonder, like, you know what? Am I crazy? You know, well, the simple answer is yes, I'm crazy. Like, obviously. Like, what are you doing preparing for that? So what are you anticipating will happen? But okay, we're gonna do this. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be trouble. It's gonna be hard, but it's gonna be great. But yeah. So obviously, like the first thing is like, so what are you doing? But the second thing is like, yeah, we have very short memories because it's so much easier. And I'm not gonna pretend that I'm not like this. It's so much easier to deal with the here and the now, the biggest thing in our mind at this very moment, rather than like the long-term repercussions of something. Because long-term repercussions take a long time to think about. You know, for instance, I'm buying a new house right now. I'm not. You know, there's long story on this one. It looks like maybe no bueno, but at least until I get back from America. Like when you think long term, you're like, you have a few ideas in your head. You're not actually thinking long term. Like, you know, what about in 5 years when, you know, logically speaking, lots of people move houses. Why do they move them? How do I prevent that so I don't have to pay a second set of, you know, realtor fees, I think they're called in America, estate agent fees, you know, like how do I prevent doing the giant 1% of a house purchase? How do I prevent losing that in a few years by just buying a house I want for then now? And maybe it's because ultimately, you know, we like to pretend we're incredibly smart creatures. Like, you know, humans, we're kind of great. You know, giraffes look at us and they're like, I wish I was as smart as the humans. We like to believe that. We like to believe that, you know, all the animals look at us and they're like, wow, humans sure are great. No, I've said this before. Giraffes think that they're like the absolute, you know, like they think they're the shit. That's just how it is. They're like, yeah, I'm a giraffe. Look at my neck. You see those humans with their, look how lame their necks are. Like you see a human with a long neck and it's like, ooh. That's not a long neck. I hate to break it to you, Mr. Human. So it's interesting that like I think that we're kind of like absorbed in our own perspective too often. We're absorbed in the here and the now because you know what? The future's hard. We like to pretend we're this amazing collection of people able to prepare for the future, whatever. And I think, like, you know what? Between us, when we really try and we really put our minds to it, maybe we do somewhat of an okay job. But I think if you take, like, an average of what humans do, I think you find, like, a lot less desirable results. And so anyway, you know, why do I think democracy? Why do I think that on the internet things are a bad idea? Let me give you some examples. Also, I think I'm going too low here. I think I need to, like, end this little low section, and then this needs to go up, not down even. Yeah, this is gonna be confusing, but we can do this. So this goes around here, maybe. Yep, sure, that works. Yeah, I'm gonna regret a lot of this later. You know, I'm going to regret this whole Let's Play later. In a few years, I'll listen back and be like, you know what? Back then, I bothered to keep, you know, a week's worth of food. What a waste. I've had to throw that away, like, a couple times. I had some soup I bought when I first moved in. Entirely forgot about it. Years later, turns out soup goes bad. Like, anything with tomatoes in generally has, like, an end date to it. Yeah, I think we are particularly... but I find we're particularly focused on, like, certain things. Like, so, I don't know. Take, for example, why should... you know, like, one of the things that sounds really smart when you're, like, first getting into YouTube is, like, what if the subscribers decided everything? I'm gonna listen to that. And it's like, you know, first of all, a lot of people don't want that. Like, I'm not here to decide what content I'm watching. I'm here to watch some stuff that's really easy. That's what I want to see. I don't want to see, like, ooh, you'll decide what happens. No, I won't decide what happens. I want someone who's qualified to decide what happens in this. You know, I've been watching Superstore recently. I don't want it to be like, ooh, do you want, you know, the will they, won't they? Would you like to decide that for yourself? No, I don't want to decide. I want the show writers to do that, and then I want to be able to criticize them when they do poorly. That's that's what I really want, you know. And so yeah, that's how I feel about a fair number of things. But the problem is even that, right? So everyone agrees that the public has bad opinions a lot of the time. Do you have bad opinions about what biome to make? I mean, only time will tell. Again, I'm kind of liking it right now. Maybe I'll change my mind later. Only time will tell if you're bad at opinions about biomes. I guess I really should start covering the biome over to here too, right? Yeah, I guess this whole thing will become part of the obsidian biome. Or at least not all of it. I think all of it up to, like, where the cactus is, I think is, like, a logical endpoint. And then we have, like, a mini desert here and a desert over there. And I want them to look like they're unconnected deserts. No one should be able to tell that there is this in between them. Anyway, so I think one of the things that we do, one of the problems perhaps that we have is, you know, in my professional, not very professional all opinion, is that we over-assume, we like to be like, oh yeah, the people should decide when the people agree with us. And then when the people don't agree with us, we're like, yeah, someone else should decide who's in. And it normally comes back to that, like, same rule thing. We always like things that are like, you know, again, like, for instance, laws. Something I've been thinking about so much. Do you think laws should be universal? So, like, they should be written as they're enforced? One sec, I hear, like, noises downstairs. It's okay, I don't think anyone was breaking in. As best I could tell. What I could tell, though, is that, yeah, we have this interesting thing of, like, you know, you can trust people, except not. I find humans are like a ball of contradictions sometimes. And I wonder, like, you know what, maybe, maybe that is... You know, like, again, because my instinct is to be like, yep, we all suck, we're all hypocrites. We all just like, you know, like, everyone loves the idea of law and order to, like, enforce the things that you're doing onto other people until it's like, but then that also means their ideas onto me. Like, oh yeah, like, if I don't like smoking, I don't care if there's a smoking ban. But what about some unhealthy activities I do like? I really like, I don't know, like, fast food. Would hate a fast food ban. And it's like, well, food's very different to smoking. Smoking is something that's, you know, kind of always bad, except... And it's like, well, actually, there's some very minor benefits. Again, I've been reading a lot. Like, there's some really dumb minor benefits. They're not worthwhile, but there are some very minor benefits to smoking if you do it only once every X. And it's like, well, no one does it that way. And it's like, well, no one does, you know, fast food that way. A lot of people, probably myself included, it's not like a once-a-month treat like it probably is meant to be. You know, it might be healthy to get that amount of saturated fat in a once-a-month dose. No, that's not how people consume it. You consume it, you know, you have way too much, and then you go, oh, I'm such a fat monster, and then you do it again. That's how people actually consume it, and maybe we should build around that. And yeah, I guess we have like a real idealistic view of certain things that I sometimes wonder, does that do more harm than good? Or maybe I shouldn't be wondering any of that at all, and instead I should just say, you know what? You should just let the comments pick something. Sometimes, you know, like, even though letting people decide on their own things, usually people just end up in a thing where they're like, yeah, what I want is how things should be for everyone. Maybe I think you usually do end up with some number of people. I don't know, like call it like a group of. I think there is a group within society. I don't know how big it is. I don't know how many people it is. But I think that there are people who are like good at leading other people. I think the reason that you find people, like I don't know, the thing. A lot of people say like, yeah, why do we need leaders at all then? Like it seems very easy to jump to like, because even I like it sounds like I'm vaguely advocating like let everyone decide everything for themselves. And then like we don't need to decide for each other because we're always bad at deciding for each other. That's the message it sounds like I'm sending. And again, this is like one of those things where you can easily get people who are dissatisfied with the world by being like, yeah, if everyone just did everything they wanted, the world would be perfect. And it's like, sadly that's not a good one either. Sadly, the real response, the real answer to that is like, yeah, that's probably also not going to work. We have like a natural tendency to fall towards some leader to tell people what to do. In the world before world governments, there were like individual localized like little like city states or whatever. In the world before that, there were religious leaders that managed to send people to war out for them, etc., etc., etc. And then it's like, oh yeah, and the time before that we had like a cave tribe leader. We still have some. Again, I find this like horrifying. We have some people who live in like they live in like, call it like caveman worlds. Like they're still living like ancient humans, and it's like, yeah, they still have like a tribe leader, and the tribe leader makes the brutal decisions that everyone else doesn't want to, but we do need to have made. And yeah, some of those decisions are things that probably would be terrifying if you hear it out loud. But ultimately, I think what it is, I think my end opinion on this is always like, yeah, it sounds really appealing to be like, just let everyone do everything they want all the time. But you have to end up with like, ultimately at some point, you do need to decide. I just don't know how you're going to do it. And I don't know how you're going to do it well. We don't have people who are equipped to deal with this sort of thing, maybe. And maybe that's why we should get better at it. Or maybe the end result of this is like, actually, Toy Cat, you are a heartless monster for wanting to learn to drive in the most deadly year on record. Who are you to want to get, because again, it's a step of really logical events. Like, okay, so you should require one of these things if you're going to drive a vehicle, because vehicles are dangerous, they can kill people. Nice. Okay, if you want to do this, you have to do a bunch of like face-to-face time with a person, and then after that face-to-face time with a person, you need to have like an instructor come around. Okay, good. Okay, during a time of medical need for just a few short weeks, just 3 weeks, just to plan some curve or something, like just for 3 weeks, what we're gonna do is we're gonna make those things not okay. Oh, that 3 weeks is being extended to how long now? Well, of course we should keep extending the driving thing. That's the least essential part. The most essential things, if we're going to be taking out something first, if we're going to be allowing people to do some bad activity, it should be socialization with their friends, not with their driving and then you get down an interesting rabbit hole of like lots of individually good decisions stack up to make some not so good decisions, and maybe ultimately I'm just upset about it. And that's I think something that it's hard to admit. Like, no, I don't have some grand point about freedom and the nature of taking it, or taking, the nature of giving freedoms versus taking them away, and how it's so much easier. Not, like giving something back is not the same as, untaking it away. That you are once you take something, even temporarily, it is now yours to give. Maybe it's really easy. It's really hard to admit. Like, actually, I think I have some grand point about this, that. But really, it's just, I don't like this as it applies to me. I think one of the things we need to realize more often is when we have like grand ideas about things versus when we have like, call it selfish concerns for ourselves, or like our needs for us. And differentiating between those two things is probably a good idea, even though it hurts to be like, yeah, actually I don't have a grand theory for society. I don't actually think that society would run better if everyone just did whatever they wanted all the time, and we just hoped that it all worked. It's like, maybe that isn't the best idea either. Maybe we need to find just some happy middle place. Or maybe what we really need to find is an obsidian desert biome in natural Minecraft. I mean, I think it looks beautiful. Again, from underneath, this is a part of the biome you should never see, because it'll be entirely covered. From underneath, it looks very ugly, but given that that won't be visible after I finish this, I would say obsidian biome looks pretty good. Wait, I bet if I can show it from a particular angle where it looks like it's finished, I bet. If I stand like right here, welcome to my new obsidian biome. You like it? I hope you like it. If you do like it, you can like the video and let me know. Thank you to all the people who have been seeing the channel recently and doing any form of interaction with it. It means a lot to me. I hope that we all make it through the year and into the next one. And yeah, I hope that when I get back to the UK later this year, then I can learn to drive. And because I only wanted to drive for America. That's why I'm really frustrated. But yeah, I'm gonna be flying to the USA soon via Mexico because of current restrictions on Europeans entering if they've been in Europe in the last 2. Yeah, there's a lot of craziness happening in the world right now. I don't know if you've heard about that, but you don't need to hear about it from a Let's Play, which is why this one will end and why the next one will begin. If you're in the playlist. If you're not in the playlist, which by the way, there's an Updated Ventures Let's Play playlist. I hate watching it because I hate seeing Toycat from like pre-2012. From 2012. I hate seeing like, I know everything about it is different. Is it even the same Let's Play? You know, we change so often. At what point have you changed so much that you're not the same person? I would argue that Old Toycat and Me Toycat are different YouTube channels. You didn't subscribe to 2012's Toycat, where he says some concerning things about cactuses, I don't imagine. Or maybe you did, and maybe you regret that you're still subscribed to 2021 Toycat that complains about not being able to use the greatest privilege of all, that is learning to drive. Maybe he should just get used to it, and maybe he should stop running those damn red lights just because a cyclist in front of him does it. You know, you be in charge of the narrative you want to take from this Let's Play. All I want to say is thank you so much for watching, because I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.